All right, guys, it is summertime. It is getting ridiculously hot out there. We're putting on our favorite summer horror movies just to kind of cope with this heat. So what better way to celebrate the summertime than to go through which summer horror villains I think are the scariest. All right, so the categories for this tier list are going to be right up at the top is you're gonna need a bigger boat. Then after that is a stupendous skid mark. Then after that is gonna be kind of scary. Then after that it's gonna be, what are you waiting for, huh? And then the last category where the least scary summer horror villains are gonna fall into is eat shit and live. Now, first of all, guys, let me know down in the comments down below which summer horror villains you think are the scariest. Also, if you end up watching this video and you enjoy it, make sure you leave a like on this video. It really does help the video out a lot. And then also, just a heads up, I'm sure I'm gonna leave off some famous, iconic summer horror villains off of this list. And if I do, and there's enough of them, I'll probably make another video like this. So don't worry about it, guys. Don't get all fussy about it. Sorry about that ahead of time. I'm sure I'll forget some. All right, so starting us off first on this list is going to be Angela Baker from Sleepaway Camp, specifically the original, the OG in that franchise. And yeah, this is one of the most iconic summer camp slasher movies ever. Also, one of the most unhinged summer camp slasher movies, with also one of the craziest horror endings in the history of the genre. And Angela obviously is the reason for that. I don't know, there's just something about Angela. She's so unassuming. She looks so innocent in so many different ways, but with all of the horrific shit that she does in this movie, there's something definitely scary about that. There's clearly something wrong with this girl, but you know, it's the 80s, so we don't really know exactly what it is, but yeah, there's just something off about her going on throughout this movie, you can tell. And then obviously with the reveal and all of that, some scary shit. Angela also gives us some very memorable, very sinister, and kind of just mean kills in this movie. We get that whole bee kill, that whole sequence, how that all goes down, the bees, you know, coming through the face and coming out of the ears of that kid, out of the sores and all of that. Obviously, the curling iron kill, I mean, come on, that is one of the craziest kills probably in horror history if you just really think about it, how it all goes down, even though they don't show a lot of it. But just a mean, like, sinister kill from this girl, Angela. Like, holy shit. At one point in the movie, she's hacking up these young campers with a hatchet as well. It's like, damn, this movie really is crazy. Now, obviously, Angela isn't like this big, massive horror villain that if she was in the vicinity of you, you could never even think about getting away from. No, obviously not. Like I mentioned just a second ago, very unassuming, but you'll put your guard down around her, and that is when she will get you. But just a great horror villain in the genre, played by Felissa Rose, who is an icon as well. But just as far as how scary Angela is to me, there's some things that work, some things that don't work in this category for her character. You know, obviously she's very mean and sinister and it's got something twisted about her, but you know, I think she needs to go into the category of just kind of scary for me. Okay, and up next is going to be Cropsy from The Burning, one of my favorite slasher villains of all time, in one of my favorite slasher movies of all time. Just an all-time great summer camp slasher. I mean, this movie is pretty much like peak 80s summer camp just goodness. And the character of Cropsy is just like this guy prior to the whole prank thing, a guy who worked at the summer camp as like a maintenance guy, and then this whole prank gone wrong thing. It sounds like this guy was already a complete asshole who treated a lot of the campers pretty bad, and then after this whole prank gone wrong, he gets just badly burned and has to go through all this just terrible shit. You know, this guy is mean and he is out for revenge, and there's a lot of brutality, and you can feel just like the anger in this movie from Cropsy. And yeah, on top of that, just the way that Cropsy looks, obviously in the horror genre, we've seen a lot of characters or villains, you know, with burn scars and wounds and all of that. But Cropsy looks kind of unique in a lot of different ways, but Like I mentioned a second ago, there is some meanness to this character, and especially with the kills in this movie, and a lot of that has to do with Tom Savini working on the effects in this movie, stepping away from the Friday the 13th franchise to give us some slasher goodness in this movie, some meanness. Like I said, like when he's killing that hooker early on in the movie, there's something about that. Obviously, this is an early 80s movie, so there's going to be some grit to the kills and some realness to the kills with the practical effects, but yeah, that kill just kind of feels like this guy is pissed. There's definitely something wrong with him. And of course, just that whole like chaotic canoe scene, blood going all over the place, people dying left and right, definitely feels like just this chaotic maniac on the loose. Plus, on top of that, I think just the garden shears as the main weapon for this villain really works for me, and definitely just makes me think about this guy who's crazy and impulsively just goes into a shed somewhere or just grabs something nearby that he could find to go on his killing spree. And I think there's just something about that that really works in this movie. Now, there is some vulnerability to the Cropsey character. It's not like he's this unstoppable supernatural killing machine or anything like that, but I still do think there's just something about the character of Cropsey that's very unsettling to me, and I think Cropsey deserves to be in a stupendous skid mark. Just a great summer horror villain that, like I said, is very eerie and just has something off about him, and he's also just very mean in this movie. And yes, of course, we can't have a list like this without talking about Bruce from Jaws. Now, obviously, there's something to be said about a main horror villain in a movie that basically scars an entire generation about one particular thing: the deep, dark ocean. Hell, lakes and rivers probably got caught with some crossfire with that as well. But, you know, of course, the shark from Jaws just scarring an entire generation about the ocean. And yeah, I don't know about you, but there's something about the deep, dark, cold ocean in particular that scares the absolute shit out of me. And with the shark in Jaws, obviously a happy little accident, but I love the mystery around the character, how we don't see so much of the character. We just see little glimpses of it, of course, because it was breaking down all the time, which contributed to that, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise for me, just without question. And some of the scariest moments in Jaws to me are some of those kills that happen when the people are swimming kind of like just before dark or at dark, kind of it's dusk a little bit. There's something about that. It's just very, very eerie. And yeah, of course, our dumbasses were obviously stepping into Bruce's territory. Why? So we can float on an inflatable unicorn and just be ripped to shreds. But yeah, I mean, it's just like this battle-hardened apex predator in the ocean, and it's an environment, you know, obviously we're just simply not built for. But of course, yeah, Bruce from Jaws, you know where it needs to go. I mean, one of the most iconic summer horror villains of all time, probably the most iconic summer horror villain of all time. So it's got to go into You're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat. Okay, up next is going to be a character that is much less famous than the shark from Jaws, obviously. A character that probably a lot of you are not too familiar with, but it is going to be Howard Douglas from the movie X, the old guy. If you haven't seen X, it's a slasher movie. Highly recommend it. It was the first movie in the whole Ty West, you know, Maxine Pearl trilogy, that whole thing. Great movie, really, really do enjoy it. One of my favorite slasher movies that's came out in many, many years. But yeah, Howard in some ways is kind of similar to Angela in how he goes about this movie. He's very unassuming, so he uses that to his advantage. He catches you off guard. And yeah, this guy is old and slow, but he's also crafty at the same time. There's also something that adds to how scary Howard's character is in this movie is the characters, the younger characters in this movie, they don't really know this property very well. They're new here. They're just staying for a couple days, whereas Howard, he knows this property very, very well, and he's going to use that to his advantage. And then on top of that, this guy just gives no shits. Now, Howard probably isn't quite as like vengeful and mean as his wife is, but he definitely still has some of that within him. And also Howard gives us some of the biggest like holy shit jump scare moments in this movie. I mean, that Jenna Ortega kill when she's running out of the farmhouse, the shotgun to the face. I mean, Kid Cudi getting the shotgun by the swamp, just all great holy shit moments without question. Also, the makeup design on Howard, I think, is very, very creepy and very, very well done. And to me, there's some stuff with Howard that is scary, not quite up there, probably with Pearl in some ways, but I think Howard, for me, needs to go into the category of kind of scary because, like I mentioned, very unassuming, With this character, it's like 1 minute, you're just being invited into this old-timer's house. He's probably going to share some stories with you, talk your ear off a little bit, and then you blink and you are brutally massacred, or, possibly even worse, you're in the basement being tortured. And yes, of course, that leads us right into Howard's wife, Pearl Douglas, also specifically from X, what we're going to talk about here. And yeah, Pearl is even more unassuming than Howard. I mean, you barely see Pearl in the early stages of the movie. It's just kind of like this little old lady who you occasionally see peeking out the window at points in the movie. But man, Mia Goth just absolutely nails this character. I feel like you can just feel like the vengefulness and the hate and the resentment within this character. And also, after seeing the sequel, Pearl, you can clearly tell there is something very, very wrong just deeply within this woman. But just in general, I think females make just all-time great horror villains. And I feel like there is no moment in the movie X that nails this down even more than that moment with RJ at night as he's leaving and she's in the middle of the road. She stops him, he gets out, and then she starts to kind of come on to him, of course. And RJ, like this very, very nice guy, it seems like, yeah, he's kind of patronizing her a little bit, but I mean, Pearl is just so mean and scary in this moment. No, she doesn't shoot him or do anything like that. No, she mounts this guy and stabs him over and over and over until his head is decapitated with the music, the red lighting, and how scary that moment feels. Man, you can just feel how mean and vengeful this lady is and unhinged, and it's crazy. I also think that pitchfork kill in the barn is great as hell. Also, when she's kind of covering him back up with the hay, I also think that moment is great. But Pearl, I mean, what a great horror villain. And for me, Pearl's gonna go into a stupendous skid mark. She's very, very scary. But, on top of that, you're not going to have that skid mark. You're not going to realize that you've actually shat your pants until you're also gurgling on your own blood. Because like I mentioned a second ago with Pearl, you're going to blink and you're going to be like, wait, holy shit, what just happened? Now, just like RJ, I am dying and I didn't even see it coming. All right, up next is another one of those horror villains that you have to talk about on a list like this, which is going to be Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th franchise. And I'm going to talk about kind of the average of the Jasons across this franchise because, yes, this is a massive franchise with 12 movies, and we do get varying degrees of different scary versions of Jason, some less than others, some very, very suffocating and scary. I mean, in the 2009 movie, this version of Jason that's like this expert woodsman, he's fast, he can shoot a bow and arrow perfectly, throw axes perfectly. He's mean and just an overall just very scary version of the character. I do have a whole list of which Jasons I do think are the scariest if you want to check that out, but very scary version of the character. Then we also get some other versions that are a little less scary, but if pretty much any version of Jason gets his hands on you, you are completely done. I mean, there's some versions that can run, there's some versions that can teleport. You just feel like you can't get away, and he's massive and he's strong and he is absolutely brutal, of course. Now, the Friday the 13th movies have never really scared me or given me nightmares. Obviously, the same can be said about Jason Voorhees, but I mean, this is a horror villain that you would never, ever want to see in the woods because you are pretty much dead, and there's something scary about that. But yeah, Jason, just on average throughout this franchise, to me, he's got to go into a stupendous skid mark because there are some versions of the character that are pretty damn scary. And up next is going to be a couple horror villains that probably a lot of you are not that familiar with. It's from a new movie called Hell of a Summer that came out in 2025, a summer camp slasher movie. And the reveal in that movie is that these high schoolers named Demi and Mike are the killers in that movie. And the reveal essentially is very similar to Scream 4. They're doing this to just try to become internet famous or just famous just in general. And yeah, there are some moments in this movie where they are pretty brutal. I mean, in the opening sequence of the movie, they shove that guitar through that guy's face. But yeah, they do show us some vicious kills in this movie. So that adds a little something to the character and kind of works for me. I mean, the whole like devil looking costume kind of a thing just feels very tropey, very generic. Not all that scary to me, but I mean, yeah, these characters, they do fly under the radar. They're pretty unassuming, so they can catch you off guard like that. But nothing really about this movie feels scary to me at all. And I don't think these villains either are scary at all. So yeah, Demi and Mike, sorry, you're going to be the first ones that are going to go into Eat, Shit, and Live. Okay, up next is going to be Eric Slater from The House on Sorority Row. And Eric's motive in this movie is kind of the reverse of the original Friday the 13th. So Eric's mom is like the house mother to this sorority, and she gets accidentally killed. So Eric goes on a killing spree to avenge her death. So obviously this guy's got a clear motive and he is just out for revenge. Now, a little different than Hell of a Summer I just talked about, which doesn't really feel like that big of a motive. Well, to me at least. This guy though, this feels like a really strong motive. So a lot of these kills feel very, very mean and vicious. And there's something about that that adds to this character. A lot of the kills in this movie are very stabby and kind of intimate. I also think the practical effects are pretty fun in this movie as well. Also, just this era for horror, just the grittiness, the aesthetic of it, I think is scarier to me. Just in general, I also think this outfit of the killer for Eric, this like jester kind of a thing that doesn't really look like a clown, looks a little unique, a little different. We should probably see more of these in the genre, but I think it feels pretty unhinged and scary. I also just think the mystery around who this killer is in this movie works for me. It's very much got like a Ted Bundy kind of inspiration to it as well, which does also work. So yeah, Eric Slater from this movie, for me, is going to go into the category of kind of scary. I think that's going to be the best one for Eric. You know, the look of the killer, the mystery, all of that really, really works. But I mean, doesn't deserve to be up there with some of the greats, just as far as summer horror villains. Okay, up next is going to be the vampire gang from The Lost Boys. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland as David and just the rest of this crew. It's such a great blend of like coolness, style, but also playing mind games and manipulating people to put them into vulnerable situations and things like that. I mean, typical vampire stuff, which, you know, just is a great blend of being fun and like cool, but also vicious and scary at the same time. I mean, obviously these guys have been murdering people in this area for a very, very long time and have no issues continuing to do that. And obviously with vampires as well, when they're in their human form, very unassuming. I mean, they just kind of seem like this gang of youngsters who are, you know, just troublemakers, not necessarily murderers able to do the stuff that vampires are able to do. And yeah, with the vampire gang, I think the makeup design of these characters, especially towards the end of the movie, is really damn good and very scary as well, with the eyes and the teeth and all of that. Also, plus bonus points too, just because there is a group of them. So very, very hard to get away from. I mean, these things can fly and do all kinds of crazy shit. So to me, I think vampires work. There's something about vampires. I know it doesn't really work for everybody, but for me, there's something scary about vampires. So yeah, the gang from The Lost Boys, for me, it's got to go into a stupendous skid mark. You know, like I mentioned just a second ago, it's that weird thing. The group is very, very cool and interesting, and you want to follow them. But at the same time, they're also vicious and scary. And moving right along, yes, on a list like this, of course, we got to talk about Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, and very similar to Jason Voorhees. Get a lot of different versions of Leatherface in that franchise. Some versions that are very, very whiny, some versions that are massive and brutal. And then also, especially in that original Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, just a great blend of being like scary and big and menacing, while also like an unpredictable child at the same time, which is very, very scary. I mean, just imagine this massive guy who clearly seems a little odd, probably smells pretty horrible, and also at the same time is completely unpredictable. There's something about that that's just scary. And on top of that, he is going to treat you like you are cattle. He's going to bash you over the head with a hammer, maybe put you on a hook, maybe he's going to cut you up with a chainsaw. I mean, just not a person you would ever want to see if your car broke down in the middle of Texas and you were out looking to knock on somebody's door to get some help. Absolutely horrifying. So yeah, Leatherface has got to go up into you're gonna need a bigger boat. Okay, up next is going to be the main villain in the movie Hostel, which is the Elite Hunting Club. Now, Hostel makes this list for me because this whole movie, I just imagine it is college kids backpacking through Europe in the summertime. And there's something so scary about that, especially with this Elite Hunting Club. I mean, it's very similar to other movies that I'll talk about on this list, but you're in a foreign place. You don't know the language, the police. You don't really know how the police operate or how corrupt they are. It's just a weird place. You don't really know your way around. And it's very, very easy to just fall under some tricks or be manipulated in that type of a situation. And on top of that, there's this wealthy, prestigious group of maniacs that want to manipulate you, drug you, and capture you to murder and torture you. And there's something about that is scary as hell. And it doesn't matter if you're a girl or a guy, if you're rich or you're poor, you are absolutely fucked. I've just always loved Hostel. I think this movie came at a perfect time, and there's just something very, very evil about this hunting club. And on top of that, that Dutch businessman, he adds to that as well. And it's just very, very scary to me. Honestly, this might surprise some of you, but the Elite Hunting Club from Hostel, that's got to go into, you're going to need a bigger boat, just suffocating, so hard to get away from this perfectly crafted network of people manipulating, like I said, and drugging you and using you to do some horrifying shit. Me personally, I just think it's really, really scary. Okay, and up next is going to be Tim Curry's version of Pennywise from the It miniseries from 1990. And there's a couple reasons why I have this on a summer horror villain list. Well, first of all, this movie was filmed in the summer in Vancouver, but there's also a huge portion of this movie that just feels very much like summer break for kids. They're out with no parents, kind of doing whatever they want, which, like I said, is a big part of this story and of this movie. And yeah, I mean, Tim Curry's version of Pennywise, when I think about what horror villain scared me the most in the 90s as a kid, and it is this, simply, it is this. The makeup design, horrifying. The backstory of this character, horrifying. I also think Tim Curry, just in general, you know, he's kind of a strange looking guy, just naturally, but that plays perfectly into the makeup design and how Pennywise looks. And he's just absolutely incredible and absolutely horrifying in this movie. Plus, there's just something about this movie, and maybe it's because it's from, you know, the early 90s and all of that. It just has this weird, dark eeriness throughout this entire movie from beginning to end. Even when there's nothing technically scary that's happening on screen, there's something about this movie that just feels dark and unsettling to me that just really, really works, and definitely, of course, bleeds into the Pennywise character. And yeah, on top of that, Pennywise is definitely supernatural. So even at the end of this movie, when it kind of seems like the kids defeated Pennywise, there's just something that tells you, no, this guy is probably going to keep coming back year after year after year, preying on kids all the time, and there is something absolutely horrifying about that. And I'm sure a lot of this has to do with when I first saw this movie when I was a kid in the 90s, all of that does affect this list. But of course, it's my list, so that makes sense. But I mean, look at that picture even. It's a horrifying version of the character without question, man. So it's got to go into, you're going to need a bigger boat. Scary as hell. And up next is going to be Bill Skarsgård's version of Pennywise. Now, Tim Curry's version of the character will always just be ingrained in my brain as the real Pennywise to me, just personally. But I do think this version of Pennywise as well is pretty damn scary. Now, I do have a couple gripes with this version of the character, though. First of all, I do wish they would have made the character enunciate just a little bit better. I feel like he's just kind of slurring his words throughout big portions of this movie, which makes his character kind of a little hard to understand. That's definitely a bit of a nitpick, but to me, it just kind of is distracting at times and feels just a little bit weird. I get what they're going for, but still, don't prefer that with the character. Also, at the end of chapters 1 and 2, they do kind of make Pennywise seem like a little bitch, especially that moment when they're like, hey, let's make him believe that he's small, even though he can clearly hear us when we're saying this right now. Just that whole thing, like turning him into this small baby thing, it just does not work for me. Now, even though the CGI in both of those movies is absolutely just out of control, this is still a horrifying version of this character and just a pretty damn scary horror villain just in general. The makeup design and Bill Skarsgård's just portrayal of the character has a lot of things that do really work for me that I do think is scary. So this version of Pennywise, where's it gonna go? Surprisingly for me, honestly, it's gonna go in a stupendous skid mark. I mean, Pennywise messes some people up in this movie. There's some dark things that Pennywise does, very similar to the miniseries, of course. And there's definitely some scary moments. I would probably put it a little bit on the back half of this category for me, even though they're just gonna be jumbled. I'm not gonna mess with them too much, but yeah, scary summer horror villain for sure. Okay, up next is going to be the cannibal family from The Hills Have Eyes. Now, a lot of the stuff that I already said about Leatherface does also apply here. I mean, this is just like a fucked up, inbred family you would never ever want to run into if your car broke down in the middle of the desert anywhere. I mean, they are weird, they are brutal, and possibly worst of all, they are going to be giddy to see you because, oh yeah, they also eat people. I mean, Michael Berryman as Pluto, what an icon and a character you would never ever want to see in a desert anywhere. Now, this family, it's not the scariest family in horror history or anything like that, but they do have some angles to them in this movie that is pretty unsettling and scary as well. So to me, yeah, the cannibal family from The Hills Have Eyes is going to go into the category of kind of scary for me. All right, moving right along to one of my favorite summer slasher franchises of all time. Hell, one of my favorite slasher franchises of all time, even though it's a pretty small franchise. We got the newest movie coming out, pretty hyped about that. But yes, up next is going to be Ben Willis, the fisherman from I Know What You Did Last Summer. I mean, when you leave a man for dead, make sure he's really dead. Like I said, I just love this franchise so much, and the fisherman just works for me. I feel like it is the perfect villain in a summer slasher movie like this. This fisherman outfit, slicker outfit, whatever you want to call it, I just think is great, and it's not as tropey as like a slasher horror villain walking around in a mask throughout the movie. But at that same time, it still does a good job of shadowing the character, keeping the character mysterious and scary as well. Also, the hook as the main weapon for this character. I mean, it fits the movie, obviously perfect. And it's just a very iconic but subtle weapon for a horror villain that I just really, really enjoy. And yeah, Ben Willis, he's just like this grisly older guy who is pissed off in this movie. He has a serious motive, and he wants to make these kids pay. And I feel like the kills in this movie reflect that. They do feel kind of mean, which adds to the character. But like Max getting the hook uppercut in that scene pulled across the table as well, very much like a fish, but that was actually a kill that they added in the reshoots when they figured that the movie wasn't quite bloody enough. Really glad that they did, because that is a damn good one. Also, I mean, come on, who doesn't like the Helen chase scene? That's an iconic scene for sure. And yeah, Ben Willis, the fisherman, just a great slasher villain. Now, he's not as unstoppable, obviously, as a villain like Jason Voorhees or Pennywise, but this guy will still mess you up. Now, with that said, I don't love the fisherman or Ben Willis because the character is necessarily really, really scary to me. It does have some stuff that is scary, but I like this horror villain just because I just think it's a really, really fun slasher villain, but not the scariest. So to me, Ben Willis is actually going to go into the fisherman, is going to go into kind of scary for me. All right, up next is going to be Mr. Willis's son, Will Benson, or technically Will Willis from I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, also a movie that I do really enjoyed. So it's revealed in this movie that Ben has a son who is helping him carry out the rest of the murders in this second movie. Now, in this movie, Dad does pretty much all of the killing. Will's job is to kind of put these characters into situations where they can be vulnerable and kind of manipulate them, and of course, also get them on this damn vacation in the middle of a hurricane. Obviously, probably a little bit of overkill. There's probably easier ways to carry out a plan like this, but I do feel like in this movie, Will just kind of gets in the way of his dad's plan. I feel like Ben probably could have done some more damage in this movie if Will just wasn't even around. And also, Will's motive is just kind of okay, I guess. So his motive revolves mainly around like loyalty to his dad and helping his dad carry out his plan for revenge. I mean, Will is pretty damn good at manipulating some of the characters and carrying out this whole like nice guy thing that he has going on, but is Will a scary horror villain? No, I don't think so. He's not the worst in the world, but definitely not the scariest by any means. So for me, Will is he's gonna be the first one to go into, what are you waiting for, huh? Okay, up next is going to be the Graboids from the Tremors franchise. Now, Tremors, especially that original movie, scared me quite a bit as a kid. I thought about this movie a lot throughout my childhood, especially that moment with the old people by their house as they're kind of building their house, all of that at night. They're getting pulled under the dirt. The car gets pulled under the dirt. I don't know what it is, but that particular scene kind of scared me as a kid. But yeah, another one of those things when you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's not a lot of help nearby, you're kind of screwed. But with that said, it's not like these things are unkillable or you just can't get away from them. But there is some aspects to the Graboids that definitely is scary to me, also just because I grew up on this franchise. So yeah, for me, the Graboids, they're gonna fall under kind of scary. Yeah. All right, up next is going to be Tommy Slater from Fear Street Part 2, 1978. Now, I love me some summer camp slasher movies, and this is probably the best movie so far in the Fear Street franchise. So in this movie, Tommy is basically just like a normal kid, but then eventually becomes possessed, and then he becomes kind of this unstoppable zombie Jason-like force throughout the movie that he has an objective and he is going to kill absolutely anybody that gets in his way. And definitely one thing scary and unforgiving about this character, like I mentioned just a second ago, is it does not matter who you are. If you are in his way, this guy has no moral compass at all. I mean, we see those young campers get absolutely slaughtered. And in a movie like this, you're like, holy shit, they actually went there. And also, I love that little nod to Friday the 13th Part 2 when they give him like the sackhead look, which I think is pretty scary as well. So yeah, there's some angles to this character that are very unforgiving, kind of unstoppable. He feels pretty powerful too, but by no means the scariest summer horror villain or anything like that. But yeah, Tommy, for me, I think he fits pretty perfect into a category like kind of scary. I mean, the fisherman I would put above him. I mean, a character like Angela is definitely scarier than this guy. He would definitely belong kind of on the back half of this category for me. You know what? Now that I think about it a little bit more, Angela is actually going to go in a stupendous skid mark for me. Just an unhinged, weird, scary character, definitely. But yeah, I'm going to mix that up just a little bit here on the fly. But anyways, Tommy, yeah, kind of scary for me. All right, and up next is going to be the flesh-eating virus from the original Cabin Fever. And I feel like anytime you have this invisible horror villain that's just kind of jumping from person to person and you can't really do a lot about it, I mean, that would suck ass to be in this situation. I mean, it's not really something you can really run from in certain situations. Plus, on top of that, if somebody you love or somebody you care about gets this virus, it's like, man, you're in this predicament of like, do I just leave them behind? Do I kill them? It's almost like any choice that you make, you're kind of screwed. Plus, man, the side effects of this virus look absolutely horrible. Now, how the virus is all pulled off in this movie, is it the scariest thing ever? No, it's definitely not. This movie is supposed to have a lot of comedy in it as well, and it's not supposed to be the scariest movie of all time, but there is some stuff that's definitely scary with this flesh-eating virus to me. So yeah, I'm gonna put the virus, which I consider the main villain in this movie, kind of into Kind of scary. Yeah, I think that's the right category for it. Okay, up next is going to be the Swedish Cult from Midsommar. Now, this one definitely shares some similarities, I feel like, with the hunting club from Hostel. Just in the fact of the characters don't really notice everything being as weird as they probably should because they're in a foreign place. They're kind of thinking, oh, well, it's just kind of a different way of life out here, you know? They live differently, they talk differently, and then before they know it, it's too late. And also bonus points because I'm a fan of weird cult stuff, like the documentaries they have sometimes on Netflix. I enjoy watching those. They're definitely eerie and very, very creepy. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of this movie just in general by any means, but the cult in this movie, definitely pretty damn scary. And this cult does some horrible, weird, creepy shit. Like there's a guy at one point wearing one of the Americans' face, the skin of his face, kind of like he's Leatherface. And unlike a typical slasher movie or anything like that, when they kill people, we also get moments where they kind of play it off like, no, don't worry, it's like this beautiful thing, it's a part of nature, like when they're carrying that girl like all decorated in that wheelbarrow. It just feels, you know, very unhinged. And also on top of that, they have this extra will, this extra motivation because of this like belief in this higher being, that whole thing, which is an extra bit of motivation that makes these people never want to stop. They will go to any length they need to do what they need to do. Plus, on top of that, very similar to Hostel, these people know the land. I mean, the Americans don't know where they're going. If they try to run somewhere, they don't know what the hell they're doing, and that is definitely a disadvantage for them. Plus, this cult, there is a shit ton of people in this cult. So if you try to fight back or you try to really do anything, you're going to be outnumbered, which does make it scary to me. And although, like I said, I don't really like this movie, I do think this cult is pretty scary. So it's actually going to go into a stupendous skid mark for me. All right, moving right along to our final two. Up next is going to be Friendo the Clown from Clown in a Cornfield. So Friendo, if you have not seen this movie, it's not just one person. It's basically this group in this town. And on top of that, it is a lot of people who are, it's some of the most powerful people in this town. You know, this town is down on its luck, and yeah, a lot of these people are pretty damn angry. And yeah, clowns are pretty creepy. No, this is not on the level of Pennywise or anything like that, but some of these people are also unsuspecting. You know, it's just normal people in the town who are contributing to part of this, so they will definitely catch you off guard. There's something pretty suffocating about this. You know, is Friendo one of the best horror villains to come out in the last several years or something like that? The most brutal, the scariest? No, by any means, definitely not. But there are some things in this movie with Friendo that do work, that are a little bit suffocating and a little bit scary. But for me, Friendo the Clown from Clown in Cornfield, I think it's going to be the second movie in What Are You Waiting For, huh? All right, and last but certainly not least is going to be the Piranhas from the Piranha franchise, which is honestly one of my favorite summer horror franchises of all time. I mean, all the way back to the original from 1978, all the way up to the newer ones that get a little bit more silly, a little bit more comedic. I honestly really, really enjoy all of them. And next to sharks, to me, piranhas are also top tier just as far as like summer creatures to use in a horror movie. It's just like this unstoppable, vicious school of these killing things. And in this franchise, you get prehistoric piranhas, you get normal piranhas, and kind of everything in between. I mean, pretty much anytime you mix the water, which is clearly a place we are not built for, with something that lives there and also wants to rip you to pieces, there's always going to be something that's pretty damn scary about that for me. So yeah, the piranhas from the Piranha franchise, I got to put them in a stupendous skid mark for me. Just top tier, just scary shit. All right, there you go, everybody. Those are the summer horror villains that I think are the scariest. Again, let me know down in the comments down below which summer horror villains you think are the scariest. If you want some more videos from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me. If you don't want to miss future videos on the channel, best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe. Also, if you did end up enjoying this video, leave a like on it. It really does help this video out a lot. All of my social media links are down below in the description if you want to follow me over there. But thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope you all have a good rest of your summer. But my name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.